Wednesday morning, January the 10th, 2018. Calling to order a special meeting of the Los Angeles City Council's Homelessness and Poverty Committee. My name is Marquise Harris Dawson. I represent the 8th District, the City Council, and chair of this committee. I'm joined by committee members, Councilmember Kern Price of the 9th District and Councilmember Jose Huizar of the 14th Councilmanic District. We have two items on today's agenda. If we could read item 1 into the record.
Item number 1 is the Housing and Community Investment Department report relative to the authorization to issue early funding commitments for the Prop HHH Permanent Supportive Housing Loan Program.
Excellent. So we have a report on this item from staff, and we're joined by Councilmember Mike Bonin, the 11th Council District.
Good morning, Councilman and members of the committee. My name is Sean Spear. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Housing Development with HCID, joined by Tim Elliott, who is our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Manager. We're very pleased to present to you the first set of 6 projects out of the call for projects that we issued last month. We appreciated your efforts on moving forward the actual approval for us to release that call for projects at the end of the session last year. This first set of 6 projects is out of a total of 23 applications we received. We are expediting these first 6 based upon their need to seek an approval and have commitment letters that we would issue for their applications to the state for both cap and trade dollars, as well as one project that's going in for infill infrastructure dollars. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim, who will walk you through specifics about each of the projects we're here today to approve.
Right. So as Sean said, we released a call for projects. We got 23 applications asking for $217 million worth of funding, but 6 of these projects identified state either cap and trade dollars or the infill infrastructure funds, which have a June 16th or January 16th deadline for application, and this is approximately $32 million in funding, and this is an annual cycle. So we wanted to accelerate these applications to take advantage of this funding. So those 6 applications would require $58 million in HHH funding, and those 6 projects have a total development cost of $230 million. But the $58 million would leverage $172 million in outside funds, including the state funds. This will result in the creation of 225 permanent supportive housing units, of which 111 will be for the chronically homeless, and 224 units of affordable housing for families and seniors and individuals. The homeless families will include victims of domestic violence, those with developmental disabilities, and frequent users of the county health system. The HHH funds won't be dispersed until all of the other funds are secured and they're ready to start construction. And the projects are evenly dispersed across the city in cities 2, 4, 8, 10, and 13. We'll come back with the full set of recommendations for the projects. We're going to go to the Citizens Oversight Committee and the Administrative Oversight Committee, and we'll be back in front of this committee on February 7th with the full slate of applications. And we intend to issue another call for projects during the month of February so that we can meet the bond call to issue the bond issuance in July of this year.
I just wanted to add there were a couple additional items that were part of the motion back in December for the approval for the issuance of the call for projects, asking us to report back to you on opportunities to increase participation amongst a wider range of developers, as well as to look at opportunities to further leverage the HHH dollars for projects. Our recommendation at this point is to include those items into agenda of items we would discuss with the stakeholders as part of our going back out to them for potential revisions to the HHH regulations later on this spring. But we think that there are, at this point, ways to sort of fine-tune some of our language in the call for projects that might increase sort of the wide range of developers we would really want to encourage to get involved in the program.
Glad to hear some follow-up on that. An item before us, Mr. Weezar.
Thank you. When you said they're evenly distributed throughout the city, are any of these in areas that have historically had an overconcentration of permanent supportive housing or services for homeless? Even if they're distributed throughout the city. The criteria we use in evaluation is, I forget the exact term, but in terms of decentralizing, we try to award or those that are going into areas that not have historically had these types of projects. So even if they're widely distributed throughout the city as you described it, are they still going into areas that are where we have a concentration of these services or not?
There are a few projects as part of this group that are looking to be in communities that have had permanent supportive housing in them that we've funded previously. Out of the wider range of 23 projects that we received, there's actually a fairly even distribution across the city, which is really encouraging because it includes some council districts that we have not historically had permanent supportive housing developed in.
Okay, and we're encouraging that, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and in terms of the cost per unit, I know we had some forecasting as to how much it would cost us so we could leverage the dollars out for 10 years. Are they coming in what we anticipated or overpriced, underpriced?
Well, the total development, the average total development cost of this group is a little over $500,000 per unit, but that includes the value of the city-owned land. And almost every one of these projects is either on city-owned land or land that's already owned by a developer. So we haven't subtracted that cost out of this total development cost, but we could certainly calculate that amount. But the subsidy from the city-owned land or land that's already owned by the developers is significant and would greatly reduce that amount.
So is the average cost per unit on these 6 projects above what we've expected? It is.
Slightly, but it is consistent with other projects that we've seen,
Okay.
particularly permanent supportive.
So if we continue on this path, we have to recalibrate our plans in the future and how much dollars we expect it to come in and either find ways to cut down how much it costs us per unit and push back on whoever's proposing this, and or we're just going to realize we're going to have less money in the future. So, correct?
Hi, Meg Barclay, City Homeless Coordinator in the CAO's office. Just also, the Housing Department, or Housing Community Investment Department, excuse me, is working on kind of a forecasting of, how they expect the funding to go out and what the unit targets will be for Proposition HHH now that they're building this pipeline. And that report is expected to come to the Citizens Oversight Committee in February or March of this year. And we can also look at forwarding that through to here too, so you can get that, just so you understand that forecasting is also being done.
Gotcha. My final question is, the 23 that applied, and then there were 6 that are before us, those others, they're still in the pipeline for evaluation, or they just did not get accepted?
That's correct. We prioritized the evaluation of these first 6 because of their deadline.
Okay, but those others are still in the pipeline?
Evaluation for the other 23.
Okay, thank you.
With a total 23.
Mr. Price?
I just was glad we're moving forward on it. This is exciting. I mean, it's snail's pace, but it is at a pace. I just appreciate the family effort. And really bringing these 6 to the table, and we want to just make sure that the pipeline continues to grow. We need to really get this. The chair was intimating. We have to really bring cost per unit down. It's something we all realize seriously around the country. Bring this on some kind of scale.
Yeah, I think it's a very important issue because in part the overall cost of the projects translates to the additional amount that we have to put in for each of these projects to make them work. We have had conversations with stakeholders and other groups that traditionally haven't played a role in supportive housing around ideas of coming up with different types of physical designs that may significantly cut down on costs. You know, we're in part having these conversations with them, educating them about some of the unique needs that come along with supportive housing, but at the same time, we're encouraged by their interest and think that there may be opportunities for them to bring those projects forward. In part, those will then help us to then figure out what we may want to change in terms of the regulations to encourage such projects that have fairly lower total development costs at the end of the day.
Now, one of the advantages of these projects have are reduced parking requirements. Is that correct, or is that correct? How does that play into
The
the project?
permanent supportive ordinance, which I think has been proposed and is maybe coming before your body at some point soon, addresses that potential. We think it's a great opportunity to see ways to further encourage supportive housing and clear the way for them to move forward faster and thereby save costs.
By reducing parking requirements?
Parking requirements as well as the entitlement process.
A couple questions. Are you saying that the cost isn't actually 500,000?
Well, that includes the value of the city-owned land. Now, every one of these except one is on land that's either owned by the city or owned by the developer and is being donated. There's one that had to be bought, it was state surplus land that had to be purchased at fair market value. So this includes the value of the land, which is substantial, and we haven't calculated the net. We could, but this assumes the fair market value of the
I'd be
city.
curious to see both figures side
We
by
could
side.
certainly do that. I don't have that figure in front of me.
Yeah, that would be useful to know.
But you know, we try to build on the free land first.
Right. Second question is, do we have anything in this batch or in the pipeline that is conversion of a motel or anything like that?
There are a few that we're looking at. We've received 2 applications for motel conversions, and those have been turned over to our outside consultants for review.
Okay. How many do we have of
We
those?
have 2 of those.
And are we going out and actively pushing stuff like that, or are we just sort of waiting to see what comes in?
Well, the Housing Authority had an initiative last year where I think they awarded 500 vouchers to a group of developers to go out and find those projects, and these are the first 2 that we're seeing from that initiative.
In my district, a developer, Ken Cahan, and in I think Mr. O'Farrell or Mr. Rue's district, Prophet Walker and some others are putting together developments, not permanent supportive housing, but are putting together developments of what are effectively shared living. It's you have your own unit, but there are common areas together, and it's reducing the cost of the units. It's targeted in some ways for sort of millennials who otherwise can't afford to live and work in Los Angeles. Is that model something that we're looking at, or is anybody in the permanent supportive housing community looking at that, where the individual units might be significantly cheaper because you're sharing a cost of the common area?
Yeah, there are competing thoughts about that as a permanent housing solution versus a temporary or transitional housing solution. At this standpoint, they are permitted under facilities, I believe, and they can speak to that more specifically. But we do not have a specific prohibition or anything like that within the permanent supportive housing program that we operate. That being said, I think it's worth exploring more thoroughly with the stakeholders. I think there has been some concern about that as a long-term model for living for folks.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see us actually pull together a bunch of folks and look at what other cities are done, look at what creative ideas there are in Los Angeles, even the crazy outside the box stuff, and see what makes sense, because we need to bring the cost down for the projects we're getting, but we probably need to look at different models of projects to get the cost down as well.
Yes, I agree.
One more, Mr. Yes, Mr. Mr. Bonin was raising those issues, it occurred to me that for service providers, we want to be able to provide permanent supportive housing for individuals to would have an apartment or a place to live just like any other place, right? We want the same amenities, we want regular living conditions, et cetera. That's the whole idea. We put people back on their feet to be able to live productive lives. So I want to encourage us to find ways to cut costs, but we would also have to discuss it with service providers in terms of the philosophy of getting folks back on their feet, and it fits with that. But nonetheless, Councilmember Bonin does make a great point in that whether we are getting projects in higher than anticipated, the cost that we anticipated, we have to look for cost cutting. It seems that we should be thinking creatively about how we could move forward and cut the cost per unit and encourage these individuals, whether it's with Mr. Bonin suggested getting a group of these folks together and coming to something creatively, because no matter how you look at it, whether it's these six or whatever, every bond program like this, like we did at the school projects that we did when I was there, the cost always go up for whatever reason, right? It's just cost of living, we didn't forecast correctly, and we, I think, are already starting on the high end, so we have to start cutting back, and I think that's something that we all should be looking at and find creative ways to cut down.
Yeah, definitely. And we've been really encouraged by some of the ideas that have been brought forward by architects, by other developers that around modular, prefabbed, other containers even. You know, so I think we really want to make sure that we kind of encourage those ideas as part of the stakeholder process to review what may be opportunities there.
Excellent. Thank you all. We have a couple public comment cards, and sit tight because we have you all on the next item. So on item number 1, we have 2 speaker cards, one from Jed Harriet from the Democratic Socialist of America, Los Angeles chapter, and Ms. Patricia McAllister.
Good morning. I wish I was here under better circumstances. As you guys know, you've seen me before. You're probably going to see me and other members of my organization from here on out at these meetings to report on, while we wait for HH money to be implemented into actual housing, the solution that you guys have voted on to deal with these homeless encampments that are just spreading like wildfire is LEMC 5611, which Councilmember O'Farrell says is just a clear right-of-way so baby carriages can get by. And yet, just in the past few weeks alone, we've seen countless sweeps where 5611 is being used to discard people's entire property, sleeping bags, warm clothes, tents, people who have jobs, by the way. Tommy dates a man who had his tent slashed by sanitation so they could search for biohazards. They found none and threw everything out. He was left in the cold. Thankfully, he had a car to sleep in, and yet he had to find a place to park that wasn't illegal because we've criminalized parking, sleeping in cars. This is ridiculous, and I hate to say it, but it is a lawsuit awaiting a plaintiff, and you guys have to go back to the drawing board.
Thank you.
Patricia McAllister here. As I mentioned in the last council meeting, according to the Los Angeles Unified School District, 80% of the children in the schools are the children of illegal aliens. They're Hispanic, Latino, and illegal alien Asians. So when you're building these housing facilities, you're building them for illegal aliens. If you look around as you drive, you will see Mexicans, Asians, and other illegals working, not black people and not white people. Now, you mentioned the districts that's getting this housing, District 2, 4, 8, 10, and 13. You didn't mention 9, Current Price. He has one of the highest homeless districts in the city, and Huzzar, he has the highest one, 14th. Those 2 districts should be also included. I don't know what you're doing. You 2 are not complaining about not being on the list. If they don't have city-owned property in your district, do something to get something in your districts, okay? We got too many black people on the street, and you allow this to happen, okay? All of you, you're not really doing your jobs.
All right, so I'll move that we accept this item.
Yes, sir.
There's a second. Second. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order. Item number 2.
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department reports and CAO 2 report relative to a request for approval to execute disposition and development agreements and owner participation agreements for the development of affordable housing on city-owned properties. This item was also referred to the Housing Committee.
Good morning. Emily Zen Cervantes from the Office of the City Administrative Officer. The Housing Community Investment Department is requesting authority to execute disposition and development agreements and owners' participation agreements for the development of affordable housing on city-owned properties. Subsequent to them releasing their initial report, they released an addendum that wanted to add an additional project for consideration by council for its disposition and conveyance to the selected developer. And then subsequent to them releasing their addendum, we became aware that one of the projects, the amended and restated option agreement with the developer is going to expire before all of the final documentation is completed for the city to convey that property to them. And so therefore, we have additional recommendations in our report. So our office recommends that the council, subject to the approval of the mayor, 1, adopts and recommendation 2A and B of the related Housing and Community Investment Department transmittal dated December 20th, 2017, relative to the request to execute disposition and development agreements for owner participation agreements with selected developers. 2, adopt recommendation 2A through E of the related HCID addendum to the above referenced transmittal dated December 28th, 2017, relative to the disposition of 2 city-owned properties for the development of the 88th and Vermont Permitted Supportive Housing Project. And 3, authorize the general manager of HCID or designee to A. I am verbally amending our recommendation 3A to state that they negotiate and execute an extension to the amended and restated option agreement with 88th and Vermont LP for the ground leasing of the city-owned parcels comprised of the Los Angeles Department Transportation parcel located at 8707 South Menlo Avenue and the Department of Recreation and Park parcels located at 8742 and 8750 South Vermont Avenue for 3 months from February 28th, 2018 to May 31st, 2018, and to B, negotiate and execute the appropriate land conveyance documents upon final adoption of the ordinance to convey the city-owned properties for the development of the 88th and Vermont Permitted Supportive Housing Project. And C, prepare controller instructions and any necessary technical corrections consistent with the mayor and council action on this matter, subject to the approval of the city administrative officer, and authorize the controller to implement the instructions. I am available for any questions, but there are members of the Housing and Community Investment Department to answer other questions.
Thank you. Hello again. This item actually calls for the execution of DDAs or OPAs for a set of 9 city-owned parcels, 3 of which are actually participating in the HHH program that you heard about just in the previous item. Of those 3, 2 of them will be seeing cap and trade dollars, and a third will be seeking infill infrastructure next week. So the timeliness of moving this item forward alongside the item you just heard is really vital. In part, this is being brought to you because of the participation with the HHH dollars that are involved. But we'll give you some more detail on the individual parcels involved and the development plans for those going forward. I'll turn it over to Helmi Hissrich, who's the manager of our Housing Strategies and Services Division.
Great. Good morning, Helmi Hissrich. The development agreements are part of the record, and what's really before you today is the disposition of the land. All of the projects that are before you are seeking HHH funds. 7 of them have applied in December, and 2 will apply in February. And before we can make any recommendations for the use of HHH funds, we actually have to make the agreement on the land. So the land agreement that is contained in these term sheets basically states, here's what the project is proposed to be, here's the sources of funds they have to go for, they have to compete for funds, and if they accomplish those things, we will agree to either sale or lease the land, depending upon the structure of the transaction. And so all of the term sheets are contained in the record, and unless you have specific questions about the sites, we're happy to discuss that.
Members, questions, comments? All right, we have a couple public comment cards that we may ask you to comment on later. Mr. Perriott from the Democratic Socialist of America, LA chapter. And Mr. Perriott, last time you weren't on the item that we're discussing, so the rules are you have to speak on the item that's before us.
Okay, well, we're talking about unhoused people's getting housed, so I'm talking about where they're at right now. I know that's maybe not what you want to hear, but I feel like it's my duty to do that. You guys have to hear what's going on right now because I don't know when these people are going to get housed. It could be years from now. This is a 10-year project, so you guys have to hear it. We need solutions that are immediate. And right now, 5611 and these sweeps are not sufficient. I got to tell you, I'm here to give comment again to tell you that the precinct captains that come into these committee rooms and tell you how humane they're being, and how they're all giving sensitivity training to all their officers. This is just not true. We have video and photographs, like I said, the past few weeks alone, of officers treating people like subhuman because they think no one's looking. They think no one cares. It's not happening in Skid Row because they got LA Can watching them there, but we're watching them out throughout the rest of the city. I just want to let you guys know that you have to let these officers that come in here know that they have to let their teams know that they have to be held accountable. And the answers they're giving, they don't even know what 5611 is, well, we just answered to property owners and they don't want to look at this. We've got to start treating people like human beings.
Commissioner DuPont Walker.
Good morning. I know that I'm preaching to the choir because all of you are extremely committed, but I want to first say thank you. You've been vigilant in doing this work and in partnering with us, and also thank you to those who built the bridges for groups like Water DC to function. We're really supporting this matter because we do have a personal stake. Casa de Rosa sits in CD 9. It is across the street from CD 8 and across the street in the other direction from CD 1. It will provide homes for 37 formerly homeless single-parent veterans and their kids. It's a model that exists in the U.S., it exists in the county. It does not yet exist in the city. We want to also encourage you to remember how important legacy partners are in the work that we're doing. Right now, we have perhaps concentration in South LA with people who want to take advantage of the opportunity, but yet do not come with community and cultural relatedness to the work that's being done. HCID is being vigilant. They even ruined my vacation by having a due date on December 22nd. But it is the kind of energy that we need to get this work done.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. I'll move that we accept HCID and the CAO's report. If there's a second. That'll be the order. I think that concludes the business for this special meeting.
That clears the desk, sir.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you.